What's going on, everybody? Ryan the Mighty Quinn here, the Cornerman _MMA. UFC Vegas 71 is behind us. The biggest story is Sergei Pavlovich's knockout over Curtis Blades and what that means for the UFC heavyweight division. So let's start at the beginning. We're going to break down exactly what we saw and how the performance played out for Sergei. Um, so from when I looked at the odds, Sergey was an underdog. The wrestling was in question. I remember when I first saw this fight, I'm looking back at Sergey's last few performances. Curtis Blade's always going to have that polarizing wrestling, so I understand why he was favored. But I look at Sergey's last few performances. He's been knocking out people. He's been knocking out Tai Tuivasa. He knocked out Derek Lewis. People are questioning where Derek Lewis is at in his career, but Ty is still a prime contender. Now, granted, these are other strikers that he's been going against, so it's okay. So now, what does that have to do against somebody who's a wrestling base like Curtis Blades? I felt very confident that Sergey was going to be able to go in there and impose some damage on Curtis, simply because he showed so much growth within his game, within those fights, that he was knocking out those big contenders. And a lot of people say, oh, well, what happened if it went later in the fight? If it went later, yeah, it didn't. Sergey showed that he could knock people out. Now, that's why I was like, I had no reason to believe that he wasn't going to develop a little bit more going into this fight against Curtis, simply by doing the little things like staying offline so Curtis can't get in range with the double leg. Little things like that, ways to set up the striking, which can't wait to get into on that. So let's get into the fight specifically. Now, early on, Curtis was tagging him up a little bit. I did see on Twitter a lot of people felt that Curtis got a little false confidence because he was connecting and he just threw the wrestling away and wanted to stay standing with Sergey. I don't believe that happened. I believe that he just did not rush the takedowns. I believe that that was part of his game to try to get the bigger KO artist tired a little bit. And I just don't agree with the people that were saying that. So the first shot that Sergey connected with that I felt was meaningful, it was kind of a flash. So he connected with a big right hand. It was offline, and then I noticed that Curtis kind of slowed a little bit. Maybe to some people looked like he was trying to recalculate. I think that he got hit a little harder than people thought. Um, and when that happened, Curtis went for, I think, two double legs between that and the knockout. It There was a little less juice in his legs on the level change, so that's why I think that initial shot was an important one. And then Sergey really started landing right hands, left hooks, and he was really starting to gain momentum on getting on Curtis. Now, also I noticed that Sergey, at first I was like, oh, why is he jabbing like that? He changed his jab up and he was starting to do a thudding jab to Curtis. I at first was like, oh, why is he doing that? That's kind of sloppy. Then I was like, no, it makes total sense after watching the replay. I think what he was trying to do with that jab was throwing that straight thudding jab, not necessarily to knock Curtis out, but he was trying to pop Curtis's head up to create other angles for other strikes, to kind of stop Curtis in his tracks, to frame him for other strikes that were coming. And I think that's exactly what happened, because you look back and watch, it was after a few thudding jabs that the knockout blow, the knockout combination was landed from Sergey. It was a great game plan. Way to mix up the striking with the jab specifically, change the jab up. You don't see that a whole lot in mixed martial arts. I know that was something I was never really good at. I kind of just changed the angle on my punching with the jab. I never changed the the power behind it. And one thing that was, aside from Sergey's power, that I found really impressive. First, he looked like he was able to get some heavy hips on double leg defense. So his wrestling defense seems a little bit more improved than people had given him credit for. Um, was the angles he created with his striking. From such a heavy-handed heavyweight, you don't see that a whole lot. With the particularly with the right hand, he went from uh, angled uppercuts, straight uppercuts, right hooks, looping right hands. It was awesome. Left hooks, jabs, thudding jabs, stuff like that. It was really, and the way he moved his head with his punches too, as I said in videos prior, it's you don't see that a whole lot at heavyweight, and I think that that's what is so devastating to his game is the way he's just able to add different angles. You never know where the power punches are coming from like that. Uh, the only other people that I could really think of with different angles of power punches is the late Anthony Johnson, rest in peace, and Francis Ngannou. Francis Ngannou, a little bit more rangier, obviously, but Sergey really has that power behind those angle punches. And I do think that that could create some fits for John Jones. I think John Jones is a different type of wrestling in the MMA realm as Curtis Blades. Uh, but it's going to be interesting to see. You know, with the way John Jones wrestles, he likes to extend to go into the clinch and get up against the fence, get up against the throws, which I think Sergey might be susceptible to. Is maybe those lateral drops that John Jones is so good at, those body lock trips. However, to get in, um, to get in on a fighter like that, you're going to allow a person who has great power with angle punches to fight inside the telephone booth a little bit with Sergey. So I do think he opposes fits for John Jones. And as well as the other heavyweights, as I said, really going to be interesting to see what's going forward. I do hope that fight happens. I know that John Jones wants to fight Stipe and retire, but we'll see. Obviously, I want to see the Stipe John Jones fight. I know the rest of the world does too. So Sergey might have to lay back a little bit and wait and see how things play out. But it gives a lot for us to talk about with the UFC heavyweight division. We love talking about heavyweights. Fans love talking about heavyweight fighters. Anyway, that's what I got. Let me know what you think. I'll talk to you guys later this week. Peace.